Welcome to Patrick's Scale Studio. My name is Patrick and I'll be your host. This will be build video 3 of USS Langley CV-1 in 1/350th scale by Trumpeter. And this is where we ended up last time in build video 2. Pretty happy with it so far. We won't really be doing very much with this for build video 3 though, so I'm going to put it aside. I think at the end of build video 3 I was discussing starting to work on some of this photo etch here on the bottom side of the deck. A lot of photo etch, a lot of work going onto the deck. And to be honest with you, the more and more I thought about it, the more and more I would prefer that I did not put this photo etch in place just yet. And I'll tell you why. After build video 2, I got some really good comments from one of the viewers, I believe his name is Jim, who mentioned that building the support structure with the deck turned upside down would be a great way to go, because the support structure that would be supporting this up on the ship, it should be perfectly flat here, but where the structure attaches to the ship is not perfectly level. It's at varying levels here along the way. I kind of noticed that, and his suggestion really made a lot of sense, so we're going to do that. Additionally, we are going to be building the plastic version, sans the little side support pieces right here, just in case we need to pull those off and use them for the actual photo etch, and we'll get to that too when it's time to get to that. But mainly I want the plastic version because the plastic version was designed to fit to this perfectly, and so I like to have that built up when I start building up the photo etch support structure, so I can measure that against the plastic parts and make sure that everything looks right. Now if I had photo etch all over this, that would be a real problem, and that would make it for a very complicated time anytime I needed to handle this deck or anything like that, or put pieces in place. And additionally, it looks like these gussets, it looks like these are all gussets right here on the first page of the aftermarket instructions. It looks like those would all eventually attach to the brass support pieces that we'll be putting in place on this. So I'd rather get those in place after I get the brass attached to this. And then also additionally, these right here, these are all supports for the nets. There's like a photo etch nets that go all the way around from front to back on port and starboard side of the flight deck. And these pieces right there are the support pieces for those photo etch nets. But they look really, really fragile, so I do not wish to get those in place either. Great big clumsy hands would probably start knocking pieces off as soon as we tried to handle that working with any of this support structure. So what we're going to do is dive right into getting the plastic support structure put together. And then we're going to start working on some of the photo etch support structure as well to measure against the plastic stuff right there. And in the meantime also, we're not going to do any of this stuff just yet because I need to put down the wooden deck piece on top of that. And one of the other things that we might be able to get to is some of the superstructure, deck houses and stuff like that while other bits are drying up. So sit back, relax, maybe grab a favorite beverage, and we'll see where this video takes us. Alright, well, I didn't do any kind of review for this, just relied on our good friend Nigel with Nigel's Modeling Bench to do a great review of USS Langley. Their part of this is there is a bag of just these supports. They're not really attached to any sprues. Now there are other supports here as well that are attached to sprues. I'll show some of those off. Right here, these are the 2D sprues, so you get supports there and supports over here along with some of these cross braces, so we'll have to refer to the D sprues here when that time comes and we start getting to some of those parts that we'll need. Additionally, we have some more support pieces here on the K sprue. And these are little like the side cross pieces right there. And what I've seen, and I've heard from other reviews and other sources, including Jim, is that these right here are a better fit with the photo etch than the actual photo etch parts. But we will compare them and see what works out best. The photo etch parts are probably more to scale, but these aren't incredibly thick, so it may be a non-issue. So we'll see. And really, the other support parts here, more of these little side pieces right here on the E-sprue. There's 4 of these E-sprues. And then lastly, we've got support pieces here on the F-sprue. So we'll be kind of get some of these support pieces spread throughout the entire thing. So we will be definitely looking at some sprues as we go through this. But first things first, we're going to start with F6 here. And I won't show all of the cleanup and deconstruction of these parts because that would be terribly boring. But for the most part, what I'm doing is just kind of getting all these I don't really know what you would call these little pieces right here. They're just kind of like maybe like overflow pins or something like that, where there's too much plastic going into this at high pressure is able to overflow into these teeny tiny little pockets here. We're just cutting these off right now. As you can see, there's going to be some cleanup here needed. So I'm getting out a sanding stick for that. But for the most part, the idea is when we're putting this together, and we'll do this both plastic and for the photo etch here, is taking this and putting it into place where it would go on the deck. Yeah, because you can see some of these parts are not going to be coming off of this at a right angle. They're going to be coming off at an alternate angle. Because the next piece up here is going to be what L1, which is this right here. So you can see there's a size difference. So these two little supports going from J6 to L1 are going to be at an angle. So we want this in place, put those down, and then maybe a quick touch with some quick setting here just to get them in place, and we can move them off and glue them up even better than that. So I'm going to go ahead and get a lot of this stuff cleaned up and kind of place loosely where it needs to be, and we'll come right back here and have a look. Okay, except for these cross pieces here, we've gotten everything cut out and cleaned up. Now it's important to note, you'll see here, J6, K2 is not right there, K2 is right here. Since we're building this upside down and the instructions show it right side up, these parts have to go on either other side. So, for the most part, we're just going to dry fit parts right now. And the way that I made sense of it is that these hollow openings are always pointed down. Alright, so we've got... The other thing I also noticed is on these parts here, there's 2 openings, full circular openings, and then half circle openings right here that are kind of keyed. The full circular openings go all the way to the front. So again, not really putting any cement on anything at this time. I just kind of want to get things in place. Oh, man. Probably easier said than done. I gotta tell you, I usually have a pretty tough time getting trumpeter parts to fit when I've got paint on them, just because usually it's pretty, their tolerances are pretty good, but in this case the fit is so tight here even without any paint or anything like that. Alright, so Now we'll try this again. It's already starting to stray off of there. So what we might have to do is actually kind of start building this on the board, but I really would like to get everything put together. Alright, so that's on there pretty good now. That is one heck of a press fit. You know what? I'm going to do this just... Alright, that's staying in place now. Not like it would be with cement, but and we're not going to show me doing all of this just because at the rate that these pieces are going together right now, this episode would be hours long. But it'd be nice to demonstrate at least a little bit. I mean, wow, that is quite a fit. So we'll try this again. Well, I'm going to do this off camera. Alright, I got step 8 and step 9 completed, just without these cross braces right here. And did so with this, not on the instructions, but flat. And both portions, as they're constructed, fit perfectly as they should. Everything is very happy there. I even tried it out on the what we've got completed so far on Langley, and everything there seems to line up as well. A little bit of fiddling around with it just to make sure that these sink into those recesses, but I think once we, when we get the brass and everything like that ready to go, everything should flex enough to be able to fit in there as it is. So now I've got something to emulate in these plastic parts. Something to emulate in brass now. So I'm going to go ahead and start getting some of the requisite brass pieces pulled out and cut off and cleaned up, and we'll go into have a look at bending them and getting them set up and ready to go. So be right back. Before I started cutting all this stuff out and bending it up in front of the camera, it occurred to me that I get one chance at each of these, because if you know anything about photoetch and worked with it before, you bend it 90 degrees in one way, and then if you're wrong and you have to bend it 180 degrees to the other way, that part is most likely going to snap off. And that's especially true with, if you can see how this photoetch is made here, rather than a solid bend line, there's only little tabs connecting each of these bends to each other. So I cut out part B4, and this is on the B fret. I cut out 4 on the B fret here, and I bent it the way I'm assuming that everyone else bends photoetch, and the way that I've been supposed to have been bending photoetch, which is the little etched out fold areas right there would indicate that these fold up on each side. But when I did that, part B4, which looks great, actually goes to the space where it would be labeled as B6. So from looking at the instructions, this would be B6. I found out that I can, you know, if I'm following the instructions, this would be B6 even though it's truly B4. And B6 would be what fits on this side of the deck, since the deck is upside down, and the instructions show this being put together right side up, and we're building it upside down. So either I've been bending photo etch incorrectly my entire modeling career, or Trumpeter has got everything mislabeled backwards. And I checked for 16 and 17 on the C fret. Here's 16 and 17. And it's exactly the same thing as here. If I bent, for instance, part C16, where these go up on each side, then this part will be going over here instead of over here, which would make sense if I was building it, you know, with how we've been doing so far, because this is right side up and this is upside down. So I don't know what the deal is, but so far I lucked out because the little slot on there for this piece to slide into is exactly the same on both spots. It is dead center. And I found out that if I bend C16 up in the way that I've been doing photo etch, you know, as long as I've been doing photo etch, then the slot will still be in the correct spot for it too. For the most part, we're just switching places. So again, either I've been bending Trumpeter photo etch incorrectly forever, or they've got the instructions backward here. Possibly the people that were building this were doing it this way, upside down, and notated it like that instead of remembering to switch. Who knows? At any rate, I'm going to go ahead and start pulling off more pieces of photo etch, and we'll do a few bends on camera, and we'll see where we go from there. For my actual fold demonstration here on some of these pieces, we're going to go with, it's either 16 or 17, and I'm going to fold this the way I think it needs to be folded. Let's zoom in here a bit. So, mind you, again, kind of been wrestling with where the whether these pieces need to be folded up or down according to where the little etched bend lines are. And for the most part, I'm going with what I've always done with photo etch, and I'm folding up on where those etched bend lines are. But looking at some of the other pieces, and we'll have a look at those here soon, it could be that this is set up to fold down on those etched bend lines. Not a big fan particularly of that, because I think the parts will have some unnecessary gaps to them. And yeah, I know this might be just fussing a little bit too much over making sure that's placed in there properly, but I like making sure the bends are clean. So I've got two photo etch folding tools here. I've got a smaller one right here. As you can see, it has seen some use. And it technically would fit that, but then I've got this much bigger one from Display, and I like using it for large bends. But that's pretty much all there is to these little cross braces here. And you'll notice on the one side they have, oops, stop using tweezers. Alright, on the one side there they have a little notch right there, and that looks like that holds a girder that goes underneath the width of the flight deck. So I'm going to put that aside. I'm going to go ahead and get everything else bent up, and we'll be back here to talk about one of these. So all of the photo etch for the supports on page 3 has been bent up. All these parts have been cut out, they've all been bent. And again, I bent in the direction that I am used to bending with photo etch. The conundrum comes up here with these like arches almost, square arches I guess. And one of which is right here. So there's no big deal here. We could bend this any which way we wanted. Either all the folds go up according to the tiny little bend lines. Let me see if I can zoom this in a bit here so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so if you look real closely there, these teeny tiny little connecting points right here, and that is the etch. You know what, maybe there, that's actually better. I had it upside down. But you can see these teeny tiny little points here, that's the etch. And what really makes them stand apart is they don't have a shiny appearance like the rest of the brass does. It's a flat appearance on that. And also I can see where maybe a little cleanup here, and over here needs to be done here with the higher resolution there. But at any rate, what I normally have done every time I've done photo etch is I keep that little etched hinge flat against, you know, some bottom surface, and I fold everything up on that. This part doesn't really have any problem with doing it either way, but once I start doing it, you get different looks if you're going to fold it up or if you're going to fold it down. You get different looks from, you know, with the end result. So if we have a look at the actual another photo etch piece that is not yet come into play, you can see there's some etched in detail here. So if I fold all of this up, all that etched in detail is going to be on the inside, and the only thing we're going to see is just this and some really weirdly randomized, seemingly randomized holes through it. So we definitely would like to see that etched detail. Additionally, if you look here in the instructions, parts like right there, where it actually is a little subassembly after you get that folded up, and then you have to add a little bit more photo etch. There's some of those parts here, and that is B3. Let me locate that one. It's the one with the etched detail, where those parts fit in, and there are actually little etched out areas for those parts to go into. Now again, if I fold it the way I normally do, I won't have those locating points. So I'd be interested if anyone who else has done this, how they went about doing it as far as which direction they've folded in, and if I'm just crazy and I've been doing it wrong all my life. But I'm going to go ahead and fold down instead of up, which is really, again, kind of counterintuitive, because when you have those little folded etch hinges facing up, it's a lot easier to see in your photo etch tools. But at any rate, we will go ahead and we're going to do one off camera and do one on camera so we can know what it all looks like. As much as I'd like to use that display photo etch folding tool, it's just not really practical here. So I did fold up one here. It is right here. Nothing's been glued yet. I might attempt to solder this. I've heard other people. In fact, that was one of Jim's suggestions, with soldering, I believe. And I might try soldering, but soldering and I have got a complex relationship. The whole process of it is not very fond of me at all. So I definitely try to avoid soldering when I can. When we start off doing this here, I just go in with the this Tamiya photo etch bending tool here, just a handheld bending tool. This is just how I'm doing it. This is by no means a tutorial on how everyone needs to do it. And I would imagine. There's probably some out there that, like me, were a little puzzled about the direction of the folds here. So I don't care for it, and we'll explain why. So for the most part, all the real folding here is done. I'm just going to drop it down, and the rest of this can kind of just be handled with fingers and tweezers. But I'm going to put this aside real quick because I don't want this video to be overly long. And the reason why there's a difference, you can actually see the difference here in the direction of the folds. Alright, so this is the one originally where I folded up. And you can kind of see the corners are pretty tight. You can definitely see where the fold is right there. But you don't see a lot of gap. If I can manipulate that, you kind of see what I'm seeing there. There's no real gap in between those planes folding like that. Now with this, that's a fold right there. You can see definitely there's a gap right there. So that's either something we're going to be filling with CA glue or with solder, whichever direction we take it. And that is why I really was having a tough time, a little puzzled over their direction on how that photo etch was done. There's other companies that do their photo etch that will etch both sides. So you've got etch detail on the other side away from a fold, and you're still folding it up like that. And that definitely would have been the way to go with this, not the way that they've got it. That, and in addition to the fact that those are just little, almost like just little individual fold hinges. Let's see if this will start focusing. Come on there. Instead of an actual fold line that goes the whole length of that fold, you just have three teeny tiny little like hinges, and those will break off in a heartbeat if you overfold this or try to fold it back on itself. So take note, you only get enough for one try. After one try, the parts break, the brass breaks, and then you have to either glue them together or scrap it, say to hell with it, and go with the plastic. Well, if anything, I think the detail upset by Trumpeter is going to, maybe it was just gifted and put into my line of sight by the modeling gods, because it is definitely going to help me hone my soldering skills, which I would say are weak at best. But I did go ahead and solder this up. I bent it the way that I believe Trumpeter intended it to be bent. And I soldered it, and it is incredibly strong. And for this particular piece, I actually came along with a little Display rotary tool. And it's got a 400 grit sanding disc attached to a little sponge that I was able to come along and get rid of any excess solder, which there was quite a bit there. So I have yet to do the same on this one though. This one has been soldered. I just got done soldering it. As you can see, there's quite a bit extra there. So kind of go ahead and show you how well this does. It's probably not going to focus really great, but at least you can see what it started off looking like and what it'll end up looking like. Now, one thing I'm still not 100% sure on is exactly where to hold this. Alright, so still going. Yes, there is. Now we're starting to get rid of some of that excess solder. I'll turn it over to its side now. I've watched other YouTube videos where the modelers have used this on plastic. I tried using it on plastic, and it does a very good job of starting to melt the plastic. And that's even on its lowest speed. So plastic, I'm still going to be going the old-fashioned way, just a sanding stick or some sandpaper. But you can see, kind of start to see the corner there and some of that excess solder being sanded away. So I'm going to continue to do this off camera, but I'll touch base here when I get a little bit more done. Okay, well, this upper part of page 4 for the detail upset is complete. Have a look at it. And really it represents about 4 or 5 days worth of work just on this, and this almost being finished here. What it also represents is the reason why I prefer CA glue to soldering. Hopefully this is coming into focus. I'm just not good at soldering. That's all there is to it. It's a skill that I'm going to have to work on. I'm not going to show anything on camera as far as my soldering skill goes until I'm kind of comfortable showing off that it looks like I halfway know what I'm doing. Until that time comes. Maybe it'll be during this build, maybe it won't. I don't know, we'll see. But for the most part, I got this together. I still got some of these braces here to go. I am going to continue to try to use the photo etch braces. It's contrary to what I've seen in comments and by Nigel on his review of the set. It seems to be working out okay so far. Maybe it's some of the braces back there. This one is just a touch slack bent, I guess you could say, but luckily it's the inside one and not the outside one, so I don't think it'll be that noticeable. And I've got a plan for what the outside ones, on doing the outside ones, so hopefully, again, they'll be nice and taut and it won't really be too much of a distraction to the eye. It's a little bit flexible, but everything lays down nice and flat on the deck and fits together as it should so far. So I am relatively happy with how it's turned out so far. I just wish it didn't look like you know, someone's very first day using a soldering iron. But one other thing I wanted to point out here is for these back pieces here, there's sub-assemblies, EE and GG up here. And what that entails is, let me move the stuff aside so I can bring this up and show you. These teeny tiny little parts here, J5, J5, and over here J6, J6. There are impressions that have been etched into the faces of these for where those parts are supposed to go. And obviously, as you see there, those are not photo etch, that's plastic. The photo etch parts are too big. They are oversized and too big and did not fit on there properly. Every time I tried to attach them, CA glue and solder, they ended up just folding down, completely folding down and not being like a little shelf. So I went ahead and cut out some tiny little thin bit of styrene and super glued it on there, and that's what I'm going to use in place of those little photo etch bits. In the end, I don't think it's going to be all that apparent anyway. So that is, I think, going to be a wrap for this build video, number 3 of the USS Langley. Moving on, of course, there's a lot more soldering work to go. Hooray for that. But some of the other things we're going to start touching on here as well, while I'm doing some of that soldering in the background, is going to be starting to get some of this superstructure put together and knocked out. Additionally, yep, back here, I missed it on page 11, I got to get the rails for these overhead cranes put together here. These right here, these rails, are actually what go on these little bits right here that I had to replace the photo etch with plastic for. And at the same time, eventually, we got to get around to tackling the deck here, which is back here. So we've got a lot more photo etch to go on the deck. Luckily, none of this is soldering wise. But my my hunch was correct in that all of these little pieces of photo etch, these little gussets, are supposed to match up with the columns on that support structure. So I'm glad I waited to put those in. I want to make sure the support structure goes in place before I put these on, make sure that everything fits down the road. But that will be what we work on next time. More soldering stuff, possibly, superstructure, and maybe we'll start to work on the deck a little bit. And that will be build video 4. But until that time comes, stay safe and happy modeling.